kayecha jivite cha anupekatan. Kayecha jivite cha anapekatan upatapeti. This means that one must establish disregard with regard to one's body and one's life. In whatever work one does, one can't get good value if one doesn't put in full effort. If one is afraid for one's body or afraid for one's life, then one won't give sufficient effort to doing the task. If one wants one's value, one's status in life to increase, then one has to really give full effort when it's as needed. And only then will one get what one wants, the success that one wants. And this is especially true in practice, that if we favor our body or we fear that we're going to harm ourselves through doing the practice, then one won't make the effort needed to develop the practice, and thus one won't be able to bring about making oneself a true human being with the ability to keep one's mind, one's mentality humane, and being human to develop special human knowledge. The practice won't develop if one doesn't give it full effort. So one has to understand this. Only if one can bear pain and not be afraid of death will one be able to go all out in the practice. If one fears pain or death, if one has regard for one's life or limb, then one won't surrender to the practice. And without surrendering to the practice, one won't make the effort needed to make oneself a true human being, to develop a humane mentality, and to develop special human knowledge. And in the world, most people are like this. What it means to not have regard for one's body, it is said, asuchi bhavena bahiraka navinyanaka kunapeviya. To regard one's body as though it is an unclean corpse, any type of corpse, and something outside of oneself. Kunapa means a corpse, so it could be any type. It could be the corpse of an animal or the corpse of a human. So one needs to view it as something unclean, the body as something unclean, atusi bhavena, and outside of oneself, external. Especially when one practices, when pain arises, if one feels, if one has consideration, this hurts, or one fears disease, or one fears one's going to die, this is like trying to protect a corpse. Instead of making effort in the practice, which can guarantee us happiness, when we favor our body, it's like favoring something which has no guarantee, which is completely unreliable. When one sits, when pain arises, there are some yogis who switch here and there every time pain arises. One has to be patient in the face of pain. And if in observing it one comes to the point where one has to move, then one should do so with awareness, keeping one's awareness as one changes into the new position. If one can be patient with pain, this type of attitude will gradually become stronger. And then one will be able to note the pain without moving. And the mind will be strong enough that it just stays with the pain. And there won't be any more form appearing in the mind. There won't be any sense of what part of the body is hurting. It will just be the mind and the pain. It is only when the form appears in the mind, only when the form is present, does one have regard for one's body. So one has to develop one's mindfulness until it reaches this stage where it can observe pain without any sense of the form. And if one can observe pain in this way, then it's painful and it's also good. In the world, there isn't such a type of thing that is this way, but in the practice, it's this way. For the yogi, if the yogi can bear the pain with patience, and if the yogi can develop one's observation so that one can be brave enough to encounter the pain and overcome it just one time, then one will be really brave about it. One will be able to, one will feel that one can challenge the pain. One will no longer fear pain if one can overcome it once. So because of that, there's the instruction that when pain arises, one should view the body as an unclean corpse that is outside of oneself, and one should bear the pain with patience. Jivite cha anapekatang upatapeti, it is said that regarding one's life, one should also establish disregard. Jivita is a word that means life or life force, and there's two parts to it. There's the physical life force and the mental life force, rupa and nama. And the physical life force is an element that keeps the matter in the body fresh. And we can't see this rupa jivita, this physical life force, but it is spread throughout the entire body wherever there is moisture. And there's also a mental component to this jivita, nama, and this keeps the mind alive. It's like the mental life force. And because of it, consciousness occurs again and again and again. So jivita means these two things, the mental and physical life force. And it is said in the text that we should view this as an enemy which does not want our welfare. Human beings like pleasure. They like to eat and sleep and drink and so on. And people like to be young, but they get old. We don't like this. And even though we don't like it, we continue to live. And disease happens, disease arises, and we continue to live with this disease. And we even want to kill ourselves at times because of what we experience in the body, because of the pain. So we don't have regard for our life at those times. But as long as this jivita, mental and physical life force, is still happening, we continue to live. So if we have a lot of problems physically and so on, then we no longer want this life. We no longer have any regard for this life. And the problems that we have, the physical suffering we have, it's because we have this life force. We have this existence. So at that time, we do regard our life as an enemy because we experience so much trouble. And yogis too should have this attitude, towards their life. They should regard it as an enemy that does not want their welfare. They should have no special regard for it at all, no consideration for it. This is the weakness of beings, that if we get a new life, a new existence, in that new existence, we age, we have disease, and we die. There's no one who can avoid this. So these three, old age, sickness, and death, they're always coming at us. And the Buddha compared it to what it's like to be in a forest fire for the animals that live in the forest. They try to escape, and they go to the east, but it's burning in the east, so they can't go that way. And they go to the north, but there's fire in that direction too, they can't escape. So they go to the west, there's fire in that direction also. They can't escape. They go to the south, in that direction too. Each direction they go in, they find fire. So finally they stop running and they just die in the bonfire of the forest fire. And the Buddha said it's like this for us in our existence. So for yogis, it's important to see this in advance. In the human world, if one is surrounded by enemies, there's a way to escape. There's some way to run away. There's some path open. But in this, with old age, sickness, and death, zawang nati palaiton, it is said that there's no way to run away from these three facts of life. There's no escape route when it comes to old age, aging, sickness, and death. These all beings have to surrender to these three facts: old age, sickness, and death. Yogis who really note well, who practice well, who know the method for achieving freedom from existence, and who have faith and a keen desire to attain this. If they know the method, then when they make effort in the practice, they can become free of old age, sickness, and death. Yogis who become free of old age, sickness, and death, they observe, starting with the rising and the falling, they observe the objects that arise at the six sense doors. In order to observe, they apply ardent effort. This is virya. And there's no laziness. They apply ardent effort, and thus laziness and other unwholesome mind states don't arise. Because these unwholesome mind states don't arise, they don't bring any results. Only wholesome consciousness arises. But this type of wholesome consciousness does not result in further lifetimes as a human or as a celestial being. It results in liberation from existence. Because of the effort to observe the object, sati arises, and therefore unwholesomeness can't enter the mind. Therefore, unwholesomeness doesn't arise and bring any results. Only wholesomeness arises. The mind falls collectedly on the object. This is samadhi, concentration, peaceful samadhi. And the wholesome mind arises, not unwholesome. So no unwholesome results come. And the wholesome consciousness that arises is not ordinary. It does not bring ordinary wholesome results. It is the bhavana kusala, the meditative, wholesome consciousness that contains effort, sati, and samadhi, virya, sati, samadhi. And this, because of this, one does not reach a bad existence, and one also does not reach ordinary existences. One reaches, one gains freedom from old age, sickness, and death. And this free mind, this liberated mind, is what arises in one's body, starting with the rising and the falling. One applies aiming to observe every arising object when the object arises, so that the mind connects with the object accurately. And to the extent that aiming is present, our noting, our observation becomes effective. The mind rubs against the object, and one knows the qualities that are there. When one observes the rising, the mind falls on the qualities such as there may be stiffness or tension or movement. When the mind observes the falling, it's the same way. The mind connects with the qualities that are there. The same with seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching. One knows when one observes the mind and matter, which is related as cause and effect. One knows how it arises and then passes away, how it is unsatisfactory, how it lacks any inherent self. And at that time, the potential for the kilesas to arise, the seed of the kilesas, is removed regarding the object that one observes. What this is, it's like when one is has a fever, and the fever comes every 2 days or every 3 days. And one takes medicine, and finally the fever no longer arises. So it's like the way the medicine eliminates the fever, the source of the fever completely, so too in our observation. The latent kilesas, anusaya kilesas, in the moment when knowledge arises, these are eliminated regarding the object of observation. So when effort, mindfulness, and concentration, virya, sati, and samadhi arise, then the obsessive kilesas in the mind do not arise, the pariyotana kilesas. If they do arise, then one is able to overcome them quickly with noting. And when knowledge arises, then the latent kilesas, the seeds of the kilesas regarding the object observed, these are eliminated. And at this time, there's no ordinary wholesomeness, the wholesomeness that occurs at this moment does not produce more existence. It only brings about liberation. And this type of wholesomeness that brings about liberation occurs many times. The male and female yogis here are keeping 8 precepts, at minimum 5, and here we keep 8. And when the yogis speak, they speak the truth. They don't argue, they don't speak harshly, they don't slander, and they don't engage in frivolous talk. They only talk with the meditation teacher. And sometimes, when it's absolutely necessary, they may speak among themselves just 1 or 2 words. So the yogis don't engage in faults, but by way of speech. So what they do is they keep right speech, samavacha, which is one of the paths the factors of the Sila group of the Eightfold Path. And then there's the path factor of Sammakamanta, right action. Because we keep Sila, we don't kill anything, even small things like bugs. We don't take what belongs to others, so there's no stealing. And we don't have any sexual misconduct. In fact, we don't have any sex at all. We keep the rule of celibacy, of brahmacharya. So there's no physical faults in our actions, and so our action is right action. And this is one of the factors of the Sila group, the morality group of the path. And if we look at how we are making our living, well, we aren't lying, we aren't committing physical misdeeds. So we also have the right livelihood in how we are conducting our life at this point. So the Sila factors of the path are also complete. Although we don't have any opportunity, we're not encountering opportunities to break our Sila, but because we have the full intention to avoid these types of actions, our morality can be said to be complete. So the three factors of the Sila portion of the path, the morality portion, the three factors of the concentration or samadhi group of the path, and the two factors of the wisdom or panya group of the path. All these 8 factors of the Eightfold Path are present every time we observe and know when knowledge is present. This is the forerunner path that precedes the pure and noble Eightfold Path that is the way to come into possession of true happiness. If we walk this forerunner path, we are sure to get on to the noble path. And then, because of our Sila, our physical and verbal behavior is pure and clean. Because of concentration, samadhi, the mind is refined, civilized, polite. Because of wisdom or panya, the seeds of the defilements are eliminated, and when one realizes nibbana, they are uprooted completely. So at that time, when one realizes nibbana, in the lifetimes that come, whatever future lifetimes come, one won't encounter any low existences. And the unwholesome actions that we did in the past, they don't take effect. They're in the way that they would have. So, and one's ability to safeguard oneself becomes good. So, in making effort to gain this true happiness, to gain this benefit, one needs to be patient, and one needs to not have regard for one's body or one's life. One just needs to surrender oneself to the practice. Up until now, there has been no one who has died due to the practice, and even there are those with severe diseases who have gained health. So please practice surrendering to the practice. If one does, within 1 or 2 weeks, one can experience special things. So today Sayadaw has spoken about what is the most important of the 9 causes for strengthening faith and the other ruling faculties. May you all be able to practice to develop these to completion. That's all for today. Sadhu. Sadhu. Maya Dhamma